Welcome to Firebase. I'm your host, Gary French. Today, we are honored to have with us Congressman Thomas Massie from the 4th District. Representative Massie has been serving the 4th District faithfully for several years, and the thing that I really like about him is that he stands strong for conservative values. You may not always agree with him, but I'm telling you, this is a strong supporter not only of Second Amendment right, but of your right as an American. Let me start this evening asking this question. Is anybody confused about the CDC's guidelines and what I call the egregious mask mandates? We hear that 1 mask and 2 masks and 3 masks, 15, it makes no sense. And now people are finally starting to throw their mask away like they were burning bras back in the 1960s. Well, what's your reaction, friends, if I tell you that the highest paid government employee earns over $400,000 a year, and he's a lifelong bureaucrat, and his name is Fauci? You might recognize that name. Since 2020, we've been listening to Dr. Anthony Fauci espouse all the reasons why the country should be open, then closed, then maybe not open, that we should not wear a mask, then wear a mask. And it seems like he and Andrew Cuomo got on somebody's list of being some of the sexiest men alive here in the United States. Well, in a blink of an eye, American people have been asking themselves, WWFD, what would Fauci do? Well, the more we've seen him on television, the more we've come to understand that perhaps he really does not have the welfare of the American people at heart. My guest this evening, Representative Thomas Massie, let me assure you, he has the welfare not only of his constituency here in Kentucky, but of the entire American people. Congressman, welcome to our show this evening.
Thanks for having me on, Gary. It's an honor to be on your show.
Well, I am equally delighted. I know people will think that I'm just sort of in your fan club, and I've got to say I am in your fan club.
Well, I work for you. You're my boss.
That's the thing that a lot of people don't really understand is that you do work for your people, and you're not just standing up there going along a party line. You're standing there for what's really right and what's best. And you're the kind of the kind-hearted man that really believes what Ronald Reagan said. The 9 most dreaded words that could be spoken are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Well, that's not really so.
No, it's not. I'm in the government and I've infiltrated it to help you.
So wait a minute. Is that like a covert operation? You're a spy there to keep people aware?
I call this, ever since she put up the wall here and stationed our soldiers around here, I've called it Fort Pelosi. And so behind enemy lines.
Well, you've got a great colleague up there, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, I believe, that is strong against that. And so is, who's the other one from Colorado? Boebert.
Lauren Boebert.
She's a rock star.
Her star's very bright. I realized it was going to eclipse me. And so when she got here, I'm the chairman, as you know, of the Second Amendment Caucus. So when she got here, even before she got here, I knew of her. I'd supported her in her race. I told her, I've got a deal for you, Lauren. If you will do 90% of the work, and I can take 50% of the credit, you can be the co-chair of the Second Amendment Caucus. And much to my surprise, she took the offer and has really done a great job as co-chair of the Second Amendment Caucus with me.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I tell you, I've seen both of them on Flashpoint on the Victory Channel, and I encourage you that if you get an opportunity to be on that channel, it is an absolutely impressive, narrated by Gene Bailey, a man with whom I spoke to a few weeks ago. So let me ask you about what's the big hubbub about Anthony Fauci, and what's the push to fire Fauci?
Well, you know, Marjorie was the one who drafted this bill, the Fire Fauci Act, and I was her only original co-sponsor.
Good for you.
She was a visionary, and I was her first follower on this. But in fact, before Marjorie got here to Congress, I had encouraged President Trump to fire Fauci. I'd been on a conference call with Fauci. We asked him questions, and I quickly, unfortunately, realized he wasn't qualified and wasn't even concerned enough to answer the pertinent questions that needed to be answered. In fact, back in December, I talked to my friend Ron DeSantis
Right.
and learned that Governor DeSantis had banned Dr. Fauci and Dr. Birx from the state of Florida. He forbid them from coming and speaking to any state employee, because what Fauci did is he went around to all the states, including our state in Kentucky,
Right.
and he met with the governors and the health departments and gave them the imprimatur of the federal government. Even though Trump wasn't saying to shut things down, Fauci and Birx were running around behind the scenes, having these meetings and encouraging governors basically to destroy their own economies.
That's tragic. And I witnessed that firsthand here in Kentucky with Governor Beshear. And in a previous show, I let people know I don't have anything against him. I'm sure he's a great father and a husband, but his policies and that of Fauci are bad for business and bad for the nation.
And bad for health, because when you cause people to be impoverished and lose their jobs and have to leave their homes and go through all that stress, and in the case of Kentucky, there were people who weren't getting their prescriptions filled. There were people who weren't getting their cancer screenings or their diabetes tests and treatments. So what ended up is, I believe that we got on the other side of that curve, and the treatment was worse than the disease in terms of the government response.
Yeah,
I'm not talking about any particular health treatment. But so when Marjorie introduced this bill, there were two things that attracted me to the bill. Number one, it does zero out Anthony Fauci's salary and until somebody is named to replace him. It would also make it a Senate confirmed position, which, Fauci has been around. It doesn't matter who's president, who's at the CDC. This guy has been here for decades. This needs to be a Senate confirmation selected by the president. But most importantly, and this is where she was really forward thinking, her bill, which is my bill as well, would audit his activity and the money that went to the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases.
Right. I've heard, that makes me think of former President Obama, who used, in my opinion, used to be the worst president. He's been replaced, but the elections do have consequences. And some of the information that my staff has researched is like not only the response from Senator Paul. I just love the way that he was able to stand toe-to-toe and reveal almost the evil undertones of what's going on. I know that people won't like that, but they're talking about masks are for infected people. When I was in the Army and I was stationed, I got bronchial pneumonia one time, and they put a mask on me because I was sick. And it seems like the logic, if you can call it that, there is, here's the sick person. Let's put a mask on everybody. And I think you're absolutely right. Other people got sick from all of this. Well,
and that's another thing that Fauci was wrong about. He said this was spread with droplets, not aerosols. And what we've come to find out, it's sort of an arbitrary distinction between the two. The masks would stop droplets, but they wouldn't stop aerosols. Yeah. And we've seen that now that it's actually aerosols. And if you had any common sense and thought about it for a while, everybody's ordering takeout food. Right. And if this virus were primarily spread through fluids, well, half your food is fluid. And that would have been a vector for the disease, but it never was.
Exactly.
And so it turned out it was actually these aerosols. And in fact, Nancy Pelosi, who, by the way, has fined me $500 for not wearing a mask on the floor of the House, along with Marjorie Taylor Greene and several of my other colleagues.
Right.
She set up this plexiglass tree house almost in the gallery on January 3rd, so that, or January 4th, whatever day she was re-elected as speaker, so that people who were known to be infected with COVID could come and vote for her to make sure that she was speaker. And there was no top on this plexiglass thing, and it's up there by a vent. And they were probably emanating aerosols that were just flowing over the Congress.
And it's a good thing the coronavirus can't go over the top of something or around the side.
Yeah, it always moves directly in a straight line, and of course, we're being facetious.
Yeah. And well, who's going to fine her for getting her hair done at a salon when everybody else is supposed to be closed? And I know that sounds hypercritical. No, I don't apologize for saying it. It's just
No,
this.
you shouldn't. She is hypocritical herself, and she set rules that even she can't abide by. And then she changed the rules in the House here without a vote of the House. This is why I'm contesting the fine. She changed the rules, and we didn't vote on the rule change. She changed them for Joe Biden when he came and spoke. The president wouldn't wear a mask because he knows it looks goofy, and you don't want the head of your country to look like he's somehow restrained. And so immediately she dropped the rule for anybody who was speaking. And so there's a lot of technical issues to get into. But long story short, she shouldn't have been mandating these things. And because everybody that I know in Congress has either had the vaccine or, like myself, they had the infection and recovered from it and have an immunity that's as good as or better than the vaccine as far as any of the outcome-driven results of any of these trials show.
I agree. Well, we've got less than 20 seconds before we take our break here, and we're going to talk a little bit about the vaccine and some legislation that you are pushing, H.R. 3860, that will hopefully protect our military. Folks, we are here with Congressman Thomas Massie, and we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. On our show today, we're talking with Congressman Thomas Massie. In the previous segment, we were talking about some of the issues that are going on about Fauci. Thomas, I happen to get my tongue twisted when I want to say that. Fauci. It's like you say that 20 times real fast.
It just rolls off of my tongue now. I've been saying it for 18 months.
Rightly so. Well, the other bit of news we want to talk about is this H.R. 3860 and some legislation. And I don't know if you're the key sponsor or co-sponsor on that.
I wrote that bill from scratch.
Awesome. To keep military members from being forced to receive the COVID vaccine. And before you respond on that, I mean, we during the break, we were talking about Dr. Robert Malone, who was interviewed by Tucker Carlson on Fox News last night. It was reporting that the researchers have found a link between the cases of what they describe as juvenile heart inflammation and the COVID-19 vaccine. It seems like it's creating higher risk of death. And then there's, of course, you're being called out by the news media. Have you received your vaccine? And then I love this. The headlines on there says you scolded the reporter. And of course, I can go on. The Buffalo Bills and Cole Beasley and other NFL people are taking a strong stance that not in my body, you ain't. Right. So tell us a little bit about 3860, if you can.
Well, 3860 is a bill that I wrote that says that you can't force members of the military to take the COVID vaccine, which, by the way, they're not forcing them yet. But if they change the designation at the FDA from experimental to approved, a lot of members of the military are worried that at that point they will be forced. In the meantime, they're being coerced. They're being made to live in different housing. Their conditions of their leave, how far from the base they can go, are restrained. And so I added to the bill, not only cannot be forced to take the vaccine, but they can't be given disparate treatment, like be made to wear a mask or be made to stay in substandard housing. And I didn't just dream this bill up myself. I had constituents calling me who are serving in the military overseas. They're with their families, but their families, they've made the decision they're not going to take the vaccine. And that should be a personal decision, especially, we should get into the science of why that might be a good decision for somebody who's 18 to 24, or why it should at least be their decision. And so anyways, I'm talking to pilots who've been in the military for like 14, 15 years. And this guy, his constituent said, I may just leave and it won't be an honorable discharge. It probably won't be dishonorable, won't be medical. They'll give you like a general discharge, which if somebody's looking at your resume, they're like, what is that? Exactly. But the reality is our military needs this pilot more than he needs them. And this is not a good force shaping tool to push members of the military out, experienced members of the military. And here's the scientific reason why it's probably not a good idea. The CDC just met this week, okay, to talk about myocarditis and the increased number or frequency of cases of young males 18 to 24. It
Right.
looks like they're probably, and this is just according to the vaccine adverse reaction reporting system, which is voluntary, they're probably 50 to 100 times more likely to have this condition. And that's the demographic who are serving our country, for the most part. And so this needs to be a personal decision for them. And here's the other thing, Gary. If you've already had COVID, there's the Cleveland Clinic study that had 52,000 people in it. There's a study of the entire country of Israel, which had 6 million people in it. They keep health records on all their citizens so they can do these studies. And they both showed that the immunity that you get from the natural infection is as good or better than the vaccine. And also, the Pfizer trial and the Moderna trial both showed there was no benefit in terms of outcomes conferred to those who had already had the virus by taking the vaccine. And so we know there's risks. So why would we make them take it?
It seems like, Thomas, when they say, they're quick to throw out, follow the science when it fits their narrative. Yeah. And you don't have to be super bright to know who I'm talking about when I say their narrative. But when you say follow the science, why does it seem so convenient that they ignore the science when people like Dr. Malone and others come out and say, we're killing the 18 to 24-year-olds. And I shouldn't say killing, but that we're creating a greater risk for them by giving them the vaccine. Don't we want our military to be prepared to fight battles, and rather than being indoctrinated with this leftist ideology? It's like wokeism and critical race theory. It's like,
they're subjected.
Don't get me started on that.
So much already. What they mean when they say follow the science is follow the political science. And I'm a political science denier. I went to MIT. I'm not a virologist. But I did learn how to read, and I did learn how to look at data. And frankly, this is just common sense, and anybody can do it. You don't have to go to MIT to read. And so just read the data, get informed, talk to your own doctor. The CDC's gotten a great effort to misinform doctors, and I caught them in it. I called them up and got them recorded telling me that, they were misreporting the actual results of the Pfizer trial, because they just want everybody to get the vaccine. And I think that's the wrong approach, especially, for those who've already been infected. And I'm not, Gary, I'm not encouraging people to go out and get infected instead of getting the vaccine.
I understand that, yes.
If you're in a high-risk category, this vaccine can probably save your life. If you are young and you've already had COVID, I don't know why you would take this vaccine. There's no outcome-based study that says it would.
That's absolutely right. Well, see, you make some great points there, and not only the political expediency of following the science according to what their whim and whimsy might be, but it's also you made a great comment that seems to be sorely lacking among the American people, and especially a lot of politicians today: common sense. Yeah. When I was a little boy, Mom, if I got sick, she said, well, at least you're building up an immunity to getting sick again. And therefore, that's the reason I'm listening. I can hear my mom's voice in my head here. Don't take this because you'll get sick. And I don't even take a flu shot. And I'm telling you, this is the truth. I never get sick. Yeah. If we force something upon our military members, like the vaccine, what's next? What are we going to force upon them next? What do you think the danger of that is, Thomas?
Well, there are 3 members of the military, veterans or in the reserve, who are in Congress who've co-sponsored this bill with me to protect our soldiers. And one of them, I started to tell him about the bill, and he said, put me on it. You don't have to tell me anymore. And I said, why? He said, I was forced to take an experimental anthrax vaccine. This was my colleague here in Congress telling me this. Wow. And he said it was a 12-course vaccine. And he said, I was forced to take the first one, but we won a lawsuit. And this is a landmark lawsuit And
Awesome.
he was then able to opt out of the other 11 shots, which he never took. And so they can make mistakes. It's already,
Well, this is an experimental drug.
it is experimental, and I'm worried that they'll rush it out of experimental status into approved status without fully advertising, the risks. When you take medicine, there's that little piece of paper that's always in there when you get it from the pharmacy, and you can fold it out, and it's 100 pieces, and it folds out this big.
Right.
And by law, they're required to tell you what might happen to you, even on TV. If they advertise their drugs, you've heard it. That's where they start talking really fast. May cause nosebleeds, brain trauma,
Right.
blah, 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 blah. And but they're required to say that. And that should be, they should be required to say that to anybody who's making a decision about the vaccine. And, like you, Gary,
absolutely.
I don't take the flu shot because I typically don't get sick and I'm not in a high risk category. But I've had the tetanus shot and the hepatitis shot. I've had that. And I know you've served in the military and you've had your shots,
I did.
The ones that have been tested and we know that they're efficacious and we know what the side effects are and they're generally small.
I just want to say, Congressman, it's been a great pleasure to be on our show today. Thank you for being here. We'd love to have you again. Anything you'd like to say? And
common sense, common sense, common sense. Make sure your congressman and senator has it.
All right. Thanks so much for serving, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. God bless.
Gary.
Welcome back. We've spent this program this evening talking with Congressman Thomas Massie, and I absolutely love this. In the two segments we talked about, we spoke about the Fire Fauci Act, and you remember I had said that was almost like a tongue twister to me. And the reason that there's a push in Congress to fire Anthony Fauci is because he's been doing a lot of things that escaped what you and I would call common sense. I really believe that the American people want to be safe and they want to be good citizens. But when any government or any governmental official tells you that you will do things because they say that it's right, I think that's the time for us to have a little bit of American Revolution revival within us. And I don't mean about calling to arms or doing anything violent, but I would encourage you not to just call your representative or your congressman or your senator, but for you to be engaged, to take that time to take a stand. And my friends, let me say that if you haven't been going to worship service here recently, it behooves you to really be engaged in worship service. In this program this evening, we talked about how Anthony Fauci is the highest paid government official ever in our nation, and since he is 80 or over 80, and we're seeing that his policies, if I can call it his policies, which seem to be accepted part and parcel by the left in our culture today, are not really good for your health or for your business. I quoted Ronald Reagan, that great president, who said the 9 most dreaded words that anybody can hear is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Well, friends, that's rather humorous, but it's also ironically true. One of the things that I've learned during this pandemic is that I really just don't trust the government. I don't trust the bureaucrats. There are people like Thomas Massie and Taylor Greene and Boebert, among others, Senator Rand Paul, that are doing their best to hold these unelected people accountable. But it's time for you and I to join forces, not only as conservatives, but if you are a Christian, as a Christian conservative. We need to take a stand. We need to know that there are forces that are seeking to silence this television show. There are forces that are seeking to silence the pulpits in the United States. There are forces that are seeking to silence you. And you may not think that, but my friends, all you have to do is to watch a little bit of the news. Don't get a steady diet of it because you'll end up being hyper depressed. Tune into programs like this where you know that when we say Firebase is here for you, our motto is that we target the lies and we fire for effect with the truth. And if there are not conservative voices that are taking a stand, and I mean not just hyperactive, loudmouth people, but people that are talking with what Congressman Massie alluded to, common sense, then what kind of sense are we going to get? It's incumbent upon you to be engaged in your local community. It's up to you to make sure that you are aware of what's going on. Here at Firebase News, we're doing our very best to make sure that we have shows that are not only interesting, but speak to the issues at hand. We make no apologies for being a Christian conservative news program. And we always want to know that the very top of the marker for us is to honor God, and we seek to do that. We seek to glorify Him. We want to make sure that the church body is encouraged and edified. And without exception, we want to make sure that the good news of Jesus Christ is shared with those who need Him. And my friends, if you don't like that message, well then, don't just come and try to cancel me. Take that opportunity to try to figure out why I believe that way and why I see that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Make sure that you support Christian television. Tune in again next week when we'll have another pertinent, truthful show just for you, and making sure that you will be able to hear that Jesus is alive. This is the truth. This is the battle cry that we have. It's His truth that overcomes the world. And if there's anything that we need right now to overcome the world, it's His truth. Thanks for being with us this evening. Thanks for listening in. And make sure that you know we stand here with you. Good night.